Swidz versus Felkeine, so a French face-off here, and we're going to see double Demon Hunter banned into this one, so both players having warrior actions on them.
It's all going crazy, Raven. There's so many warriors being playable. But yeah, this is the big story for me, is that the re-identification of the French players, I guess, as they're now just not the Zoo group, the players that just bring Zoo to GM every week. Like, what do their lineups look like in this new strange world that we're facing, where Scrap Imp does not just automatically win games anymore? And Swidz, for his part, is going with a good old-fashioned Spell Druid and also Stealth Rogue, Greyheart Sage Stealth Rogue, which is not something that we've even really been seeing, despite the nerfs to the secret package on the other side of the debate in Rogue. We still haven't been seeing much stealth come out.
Yeah, and I think what's very interesting to me as well is I would imagine that Swidz and Felkeine have not been practicing together this week since they are facing each other. And you see that reflected in lineups. Felkeine on the Hunter Priest, Swidz on the Rogue Druid. My only worry is, from what I've seen of Swidz, I'm not sure if, depending on who he's been practicing with instead, like letting him do his own thing is necessarily the best idea, just because Swidz definitely does have his own style of things. No, I mean, for example, like Swidz brought the 2-off mage or the mage, right? And it didn't. I don't think it paid off for him too well. And you know, Swidz does like to put his own style into it, but I definitely think the other French players sort of reeling back in to a certain extent. And at least for Felkeine, he's not had that this time round. So the different lineups, and again, I'll say if someone's bringing Priest and Hunter, that looks a little bit better to me than Druid and Rogue right now, honestly.
So I am a little sad because I made this point offhand at the start of day one, I think, fully expecting Swidz' Warrior to be banned in his series, so it wouldn't end up being relevant. But I made the point that because we have Quest Warlock in the metagame this week, Swidz' Warrior, which he's been bringing every week with Wrench Caliber, Blastmaster Boom in the otherwise fairly usual Pain Warrior archetype, is the absolute nuts against Quest Warlock, because just the card Wrench Caliber single-handedly would destroy that matchup. So I'm kind of sad now that he gets to play it, but there's no Quest Warlock on the other side, so we don't get to see how miserable your life is when you're getting bombs shuffled into your deck as a Quest Warlock.
I'm interested to see if it ends up lining up against Felkeine's Priest, though, because that does add an extra little bit of, well, Priest doesn't heal for a lot on demand, and if there's bombs going off, as well as potential damage from Gromburst and even more boom bots because of the Blastmaster Boom, maybe that is actually just too hot to handle for Priest, as opposed to the more minion-focused aggression that normal versions of Pain Warrior bring.
Looks like you're about to get your wish, though, based on what we're being shown. This is going to be the Priest coming out from Felkeine. I would counter that point by saying, well, Priest also doesn't draw cards, which is the other thing that quite often punishes you when you're playing up against Bomb Warrior. So, you know, a lot of Priest games end when they still have 15, 16 cards left in their deck, you know? So the likelihood of bombs being drawn is unlikely. But, of course, that means that the Blastmaster Boom payoff is just exponentially higher because the Priest isn't able to draw a bunch of cards and get bombs out of their deck. So it can work both ways in that scenario, I guess. So, yeah, I'm pretty interested. Let's go.
Also, as well, with the help of Corsair Cash, right? The more bombs are being shuffled in on average, right? It's not like it is just 2 of the Wrench Calibers. It's 2 Wrench Calibers potentially buffed with +1/+1 with the Corsair Cash, and also just checking. Yeah, Swidz also running a Captain Greenskin. So that means that although yes, Priest doesn't draw a ton of cards at all, but if you shuffle 10 bombs into your opponent's deck, it becomes fairly likely at least a couple are going to be drawn. But we'll see.
Okay, Raven, yes. If you shuffle 10 bombs into your opponent's deck, you're probably winning that game of Hearthstone. That's fair.
I'd love it if exactly 10 bombs get shuffled in. It's like, yeah, told you. God. I will say, though, Felkeine is doing something I've been harping on about, which is running an Ooze in his Priest list. So he has a way to at least take down one of those weapons if he draws the Ooze. And I guess that might be the answer to my repeated question of why is there not Ooze. Or maybe the Priest draw is the issue, right? If you have a tech card that you can't consistently get to, is the tech card good enough?
Yeah, for sure. And we called him out for it yesterday. Positively, we called him out for it, I should say. As he, at least, you know, he's leaving up Warrior, but at least his decks look like they're supposed to leave up Warrior, right? Like, at least he has these extra cards in there that seems like he has a consistent plan. And on that note, I guess for calling him out, I tweeted about this, but just because I never want to mischaracterize a player as playing weirdly when they weren't. Felkeine versus Ball Control yesterday, when he was just going face relentlessly against Boar's warrior. Boar only played one Armorsmith in that warrior list, which we both completely failed to notice at the time, which suddenly makes Felkeine's plan seem a little bit closer to genius than madness.
I called him a genius all along, so I'm just
Did
going to
you
ignore
now?
the fact.
Okay.
I did. I was saying he should just go aggro. Burn him down.
Well, if you say that in every situation, in every matchup ever, Raven, eventually you are going to be right.
Hmm?
Yep.
I agree.
Yep.
You've revealed my plans. We do see Thought Steal come down here for Felkeine, and the Blade Storm, a little bit of a tricky one to get off to work against Warrior, just because of the nature of the minions all being variable health totals. But still, not a bad maybe spot removal, 1 or 2 pressuring on board. Big turns here from Felkeine. The old pass on 3. Also doesn't want to feed a swing into Swidz and deal some self-damage to help with the Battle Rage for no good reason. Of course, he could have dropped an Armorsmith. Of course, he could have dropped the Sethic. It would be at least half safe, but no reason to just give Swidz the self-damage, I think.
Yeah, the Armorsmith pickup off the Thought Steal here might end up being potentially huge for Felkeine. I imagine even more important in Swidz's version of the deck than it is usually is the Armorsmith interaction from the Warrior side. A lot of the times you'll see people playing this matchup just float mana rather than play an Armorsmith. Reason being, Soul Mirror can just end the game if you play your Armorsmith and you're going for a damage push as you normally are in this matchup, even when you're not playing Wrench Caliber. Then your opponent just Soul Mirrors your board and gains like 6 or 7 armor from the Armorsmith that you gave them. That can potentially be lights out. So the fact that Felkeine just has one of his own right now could actually end up being a pretty big deal.
Yeah, and even on top of that, the other card being Blade Storm to arguably activate the Armorsmith. Because it's not like Priest plays a board of minions all the time, right? So it's not as if Armorsmith on its own is going to consistently get the job, which is why you mentioned, of course, Soul Mirror, where you do make a board because of that's what Soul Mirror does. So yeah, maybe even the Blade Storm is perfect.
Right, I was saying, like, at this point, if Felkeine can survive until the late game, which it seems like his hand is decent at doing, I guess, right now, then he can actually just play his own Armorsmith and just Soul Mirror an opponent's board straight up for a clear and gaining the armor, just all in the same turn, which is insane, because that's an interaction that you deliberately try and avoid as the Warrior in this matchup. You are right. Blade Storm would be funnier.
The bombs start ticking away now for Felkeine. But honestly, I think he's feeling pretty good about life because Swidz has not really done anything this game so far. And the more time Felkeine gets, the more time he's got set up or get to his heals, get to his Soul Mirror, get to his Galakrond, which we can see already exists alongside that Murozond as well.
Yeah, the problem is this bomb curve immediately into Blastmaster Boom, which is coming out here from Swidz. And he does just seem to have this every time he gets to play this deck on stream, which maybe is a big part of the reason why he keeps bringing it.
Yeah.
Swidz is just like, yeah, I mean, you get a Wrench Caliber in your opening hand, you swing it a couple of times, you draw Blastmaster Boom, you play it on turn 7, you win the game. What do you mean? Deck's amazing.
I don't see the problem, because Felkeine just presses Soul Mirror and watches the explosions happen. That would be the glorious response. They commit the Armorsmith.
He's going to drop the Armorsmith with the Inner Fire. Nice, okay. Very cute.
Mainly just making up space in his hand. If he did anything else, it doesn't really get him anywhere. Imagine Felkeine wants to open up some more of these Sethic turns a little bit later on now. But yeah, I really hope that happens. Blastmaster Boom into Soul Mirror is just exactly what I watch Hearthstone for.
What if you do it and then, like, the bomb trades on the left just kill your 7/7 before it even gets to attack, and you just leave their 7/7 alive on board?
That's just how it goes, isn't it?
Okay.
Just go, fair enough.
You just say GG and then go next?
Yeah, just
right,
GG. It's game 1, isn't it? Let's move on. Worth a try, it was funny.
I challenge you to Makara!
It's a big battle rage.
Okay, yeah. But just the smallest of split seconds there. I was thinking whether Swidz did not realize that the challenger hits first every single time, and then the risky skipper goes up afterwards. But of course, with the battle rage in hand, it's still 3 cards. Makes sense. I thought.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a battle rage turn.
It's definitely an interaction that you have to do the once, right? If you don't, if you don't know how it goes straight away.
I am curious about that Armorsmith usage. Obviously, I get his hand was getting very, very congested and he needed playable cards. Totally behind that. But when he has Shadow Madness and Soul Mirror in hand, there's so much Armorsmith abuse that he could have done in a matchup where health totals are going to be very relevant. Because you think you can, like, at some point, obviously here it wouldn't have been great, I don't think, but you can, like, Shadow Madness your opponent's risky skipper and then play your Armorsmith.
Right. Do you think this one's going to be straightforward? Yeah, just the time rip onto the challenger. Everything else isn't a big deal.
Right.
And you just don't want those awkward minions to be unkillable.
A piece of candy.
It's gonna play around the Soul Mirror on the boom by just playing the boom now.
Oh boy.
More realistically, there's Corsair Cash in hand. Which
There
will
is.
guarantee him the Wrench Caliber, right? Because he's already used 1 normal Wrench Caliber and an Anchor.
Correct, yep. Blastmaster Boom is a 7/7 right now, though. He's going to greed it. He does also have his second Risky Skipper in hand as well, so if he gets full greed Blastmaster Boom, he can do the Risky Skipper Blastmaster Boom thing.
I do like
Guess that
this,
makes
though.
sense.
Just start stacking these bombs. Get them in early. Get up to that 10. What is there now? It's going to be 3 in the deck.
Correct, yep.
Felkeine just says, okay, mirrors on. Let's go. It's only on 13 cards.
Yeah, I mean, that just looks like lethal to me.
So someone's going to blow up first.
Yep. Also, like, Fate Weaver, Coin, Shield of Galakrond.
Just coin out Katrina Murta.
I wonder. We are all
Yeah.
bound to
Would have been too horrible, honestly, with what Swidz has access to. Job's done.
That's invoke number 3 now for Felkeine. Still not dealing with this risky skipper problem, though. When I said he has second risky skipper in hand, he still just has a risky skipper on board.
Bladestorm, great answer to a Deathwing as well. Since Felkeine doesn't have his Shadowwood Deaths available to him. Because I think there would be some merit here for just like trade Deathwing.
Sure.
Allows you to go face again with the weapon. Makes Felkeine have to have Death. The only frustration is against Priest with plays like that is and not only Death is the answer, of course, but if it is Death, it's so cheap that they always gain the tempo back, right? You spend 8 mana on this massive thing, and they 2 mana remove it, and then you just cry a little bit inside.
Yeah. Mind Flayer Khajiit at the same time.
Sure.
Multiple disasters that can happen in that kind of scenario.
What now?
There also is here just the straightforward Blood Boil proof that would get work.
Sure.
Oh! Okay.
There's also just Grom you for
Grom
10.
face? There is 3 bombs in the deck.
There's 4 bombs in the deck.
Oh yeah, 4 now with that swing, yeah, you're right. Oh! Lethal!
There's 3 bombs in the deck.
Swidz is clapping.
There's 2 bombs in the deck.
Swidz is clapping. Well, he's got green cards, right? So we can play. Yeah, there you go.
Oh.
And there's still enough for Blastmaster Boom Skipper next turn. He'll be able to swing, probably.
That was like a 1 in 5.5 into a 1 in 7.
Told you
Felkeine
so.
just hit.
Even with Priest drawing slow, the bombs always get...
That was pretty unlikely. Just going to say that.
Go for the Galakron. To a
GG.
certain extent, that's good news for Swidz.
It's just game. Risky skipper Blastmaster boom.
Yep.
It's got to be, right? It's got to be lethal.
Puts the attack in first.
6 bombs doing 2.5 damage on average. So it's 13 damage, and he needs to do 12. So on average, he dies.
Yeah, he's clapping. There we go. Game number 1
Yep.
goes to Swidz. The Warrior and Swidz's version, specifically with those wrench calibers and the bomb package, getting the job done. And honestly, I didn't really even consider it, but looking back at it, I think the Grom play was sick. Like, it just wasn't even there in my mind, honestly. I was looking at loads of other plays. The Blood Boil Brute would have been absolutely fine. Very playable, kills off the minion. It's still a big minion there for Swidz, but nope. Him just seeing it, going, there's already some bombs in the deck. I have Grom. I still have the weapon swing that he still had the last swing of that wrench caliber. Just tons of damage. And as I mentioned, Priest can't burst heal a lot, right? They can heal a bit, over multiple turns. So, yeah, really punished Felkeine there. And that Priest took a loss. Swidz took a win with the Warrior. But that means he has Druid and Rogue left, which is the big question.
Yeah, it does back up your Grom push quite nicely when there's just 2 bombs on the top of your 22 card deck.
That's true.
Though. I do have to say in that scenario. Also, my numbers were slightly wrong at the end because the Fate Weaver dies on board and there's only 6 bombs because you have a risky skipper occupying a spot as well. But he still died on average was the important part of the calculation, whether I was wrong in the details or not. But yeah, I do think potentially out of all the weeks where we've maybe poked at this Warrior deck a little bit and just been like, why is Swidz the only one who's playing like, bomb pain Warrior? This week, it does actually seem like potentially there's some good matchups for it. Even if Swidz isn't particularly running into them, it does seem like a week where sticking to his guns is potentially going to pay off for Swidz.
Yeah, and we will see if it pays off as the rest of the series does continue. But before we get on to game number 2, we're going to go to a quick break while we set that up between Swidz and Felkeine. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with some more Hearthstone Grandmasters.
Use this spec? Nope.
쓸데없는 정보?
생각이 안 나네.
A useless fact I know is a day is 18,600 seconds.
제 친구가 요리 유튜브를 시작했는데 구독자가 지금 700명 넘었어요.
아, 나 근데 이런 거 잘하는데. 근데 최근에 아는 거 있어요. 밥에다가 그 귤이랑 김이랑 해서 먹으면 연어 초밥 맛이 난대요.
귤이랑 김이랑 싸가지고 간장에 찍어 먹으면 약간 연어 초밥 맛 난다고 해요. 믿을 만한 소스가 알려졌어요.
We are back and ready to continue this series between Swidz and Felkeine. Swidz taking an explosive victory in game number 1 off the back of his Bomb Pain Warrior. To a certain extent, I do want to call it Bane Warrior as we move on here. And he does have his Druid and Rogue left over to go up against Felkeine's full lineup. But these are where my questions start to come up because honestly, Sottle, for me, I never really got on with this Druid anyway. But for this week, I don't really see the Druid and why it's a strong pick this specific week in Grandmasters, so I think this might be where Swidz might start to fall.
Yeah, I mean, it has performed for a lot of the APAC players that brought it, although, you know, Derek and Gio will tell you that APAC players are just really good at nutting the openings with this deck and just fungal fortunes into Overgrowth, into Mount Cellar, or fungal fortunes into Innovate Glowfly, like every single game. But it's one, you know, we give APAC a lot of stick for being behind the curve a lot of the times and for, you know, their players throwing games left, right, and center. And while all that stuff is true, the one point where they may have been ahead of the curve is this build of the Druid that's cutting out the Kael'thas and just going for Ysera Unleashed at the top instead. Just a leaner, meaner version of the deck with none of the 8-cost spells, none of the Kael'thas. It has seemed to do work for the players over in APAC that have been running this deck.
Yeah, I think one thing for me, and I don't know if it is just the way I personally feel about the deck, is I think this build is the best build. But I don't know if if it's just me, but every time I feel like I cast it, it's always the Druid just doing desperation things to win the game, or just about winning the game. And honestly, if you just about win the game every game, well, that's a good deck, right? Because you win. But I always feel like it's struggling. It always has to do these like crazy broken things with the perfect card draw to get the job done.
There's a quote from a wise man called Life Coach that I'm going to adopt and adapt here, Raven. Yeah. If you win the game by a lot, it's not like someone gives you an A.
Why not? Why don't style points exist?
Still my favorite Life Coach quote. So good. If I find the play slowly, so what? If someone else finds it quickly, they don't get an A. Yeah, okay, good point.
Very difficult to argue. In the meantime, though, Felkeine is pushing forward with some threats here. The Challenger, although not a threat in terms of its attack right now, it can be, and it just having a 10-10, even if it gets buffed a small amount, it does start just eating all of the tokens that Druid can make. Just a reminder, as you're wondering, we just don't see the most eggs knocking about for now, but Felkeine is running that Egg Pain Warrior along with the Terran Gore Fiend and only one Corcoran. No Deathwing, no Captain Greenskin. Those are the mix of like 5-6 cards that people really juggle around.
Sorry, by the way, what did I say about the absolute nuts? Something about fungal fortunes into Overgrowth into Mount Cellar? Something like that, right?
That seems okay, yeah.
Okay.
I think this is where where I think the deck just bothers me personally, and I'm just wrong about it, right? But every time like Mount Cellar, it's like, right, Mount Cellar, but then you have to get the good beasts a lot of the time, and if you don't, they just get farmed, and there are some terrible beasts. So, yeah, I don't know. A lot of it is just hoping for the good outs.
I mean, he's going to play a, 6-11 Mount Cellar most of the time, and have multiple zero-cost spells to be able to play. If he even chooses to go off on 7, he can even wait and greed it even further. You have to be some pretty low-rolly beasts to not make an impressive board out of that.
You have clearly not spectated me recently, Sottle, because they're consistent out when I've tried it. Still, this Inner Rage, it'd be interesting to see where Felkeine puts it. If he puts it on the Challenger, then this just does become a bit of a farming tool. Be able to just clean up a lot of these minions turn after turn. But it does also just activate the egg. And maybe Felkeine's wondering with his hand, he might need to Inner Rage the egg, swap him with the Challenger, and then just Battle Rage for 3. His hand is fantastic right now.
It's not. I was curious about all of these Eagles last turn from Swidz. Obviously, he couldn't just draw a whole bunch with Rising Winds because of the way the Twin Spell would be working. He'd have hand size concerns. But he is on 8 cards right now, which means he had room for potentially one more. And playing a bunch of minions, like there's a school of thought that says that like Glowfly Swarm is actually pretty bad to play in this matchup because your opponent can just risky skipper and then just immediately get a 0-cost Blood Boil Brute coming back the other way, which is like super hard to beat. And he kind of created the same situation there just by playing so many minions.
At least it's a bit of a problem as well. So just the 5/5 almost out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I supply
Why is that
only
either
the
this minion
finest
straight in or
creatures.
2 forms of removal? And Druid definitely works well when it's Crystal Power, Wrath, or Bog Beam doing like 1 card, 1 kill style, as opposed to having to pile multiple into just one.
Good sequencing, just assess the situation first, and then figure out where you want your Iron Bark to go. He gets rewarded for that with the Emperor Cobra, which now by giving additional health, he does create a very awkward scenario for Felkeine. That Blood Boil Brute draw is exactly what I was talking about. That is enormous for
Gets
Felkeine.
the Battle Rage here as well. He even played the Brute first to get an extra. Oh, yeah. 6 cards for 2 mana. Oh. Yeah, I was gonna say if he gets a 1-drop as well, he can actually use the Serpent to trade into the Serpent, and keep the Blood Boil Brute alive.
It's a full clear. He can then take care of the Mount Seller afterward as well.
Well, this game just got very, very difficult for Swidz.
It did. Yeah, and that's the exact interaction I was talking about. That's the one you need from the warrior side, really. It's just clearing with a risky skipper doesn't do a lot some of the time because, you know, the druid just has so many potential refills to come back at you with. So if you're able to get through that big tempo swing with the Blood Boil Brute or get a huge Battle Rage for a massive refill, or ideally, if you're Felkeine and you're just an actual lord, both at the same time.
Yeah, and that's it. That's what pushes it, right? Instead of just clearing or just drawing a lot of cards, he did everything that turn. He's threatening and doing it all, which is, I don't know, I'm struggling to even see how Swidz comes back here. Because this board that Felkaine's put forward,
How
he can deal with.
curious.
Swidz can just beat, or at least, even out. But it's all the backup of Felkaine's card draw that he got then. It's huge.
Chooses to go for Glowfly board now, as opposed to holding off for Glowfly Soul of the Forest later. Which, sure, I can get behind it. You see one skipper.
Risky skipper, yeah, and he's not played Ankar, right? So he knows it's not. I don't want to say the word unlikely, but it's as unlikely as it's going to get because Ankar's not been played that the other skipper isn't there.
Right.
This board doesn't really do much, right?
Yeah. So the alternative line was to just do a bit more clearing that turn with the Wrath and the Crystal Power, and then use Rising Winds to draw, try and get closer to Overflow and stuff like that for the turn after your Glowfly Swarm Soul of the Forest turn. But you would be developing nothing that turn, which essentially would give Felkeine a full turn just to make whatever board state he felt like.
Oh.
Which is probably too vulnerable to like Bloodsworn Mercenary kind of plays on this 1/7 that's in play.
Tough call here, actually. I love some Commanding Shout in this deck, but okay, Mac really needs the Whirlwind here. Oh, he went the Heroics.
Plague of Wrath? Oh, the Whirlwind! Missed connections. 5 mana AoE spell, looking for 1 mana deal damage effect.
Oh, there goes Ysera. Only 13 cards left now for Swidz. Although he has the Soul of the Forest, I think continuing to draw is a good idea here. He even can use Rising Winds to generate an additional minion. That's all. He wants to use it. I think he's just going to commit, right?
Certainly looking that way.
Swidz is worrying about if he Rising Winds from minion, he doesn't use it for draw, but he has Wild Growth to draw an extra card next turn.
How
I think
curious.
rather have 4 minions instead of 3 here.
Yeah, you've got to think about second Mount Seller as well, I guess, because that's kind of the one remaining board generation that Swidz has at this point. So if he finds that off the top soon and he's left with a hand that just doesn't really pay it off very well, that could be a problem for him.
I just think, though, it's really tough, isn't it? Because if he waits for it, and it's even any longer than very soon, well, you can't just give Warrior time, right? Because they'll just assemble all of the damage and just kill you anyway. So, tough call overall. Didn't even get the Soul of Forest down this time.
Nope. So ended up shooting the Warmaw Challenger for 2 with the Crystal Power as well, just to reduce the impact, I guess, of Bloodsworn Mercenary or anything else that would come down. But it was a pretty messy looking turn, all things considered.
Yep. A couple of options here, but if we're going to live in Cool Town, I think for me it would have been the Grom Go and set up for the Bloodsworn Mercenary on the Grom.
If we're going to live in Cool Town, that's what you went with there.
It is what I went with, yeah. I do regret it a little bit, but I went with it.
Okay, good. No, as long as you're self-aware enough to regret it, that's okay.
How cool would it have been to have Grom on the board and then you have Bloodsworn Mercenary next turn? Boom, 20.
Alright, to be fair, that is pretty cool.
See? Cool Town. Population 2 now.
You know what? You're making it sound pretty. I might just get a second residence in Cool Town, you know? I don't necessarily want to live there all the time, but it might be
Nice
a
holiday
decent...
home.
Yeah, holiday destination, yeah.
Swidz does not have the best options here, and as you quite rightly pointed out, he's running out of gas as well. Because, funnily enough, without Ysera, this Druid deck is pretty slim, honestly.
Yep.
Even though it looks on surface level that it's got loads of stuff, it just doesn't. Once a couple of waves of Glowflies are gone, once the Mount Seller board's cleared up, that's pretty much all it's got. Is that lethal? Yep, with a Heroic Strike.
Heroic Strike. He's one off.
Oh, I thought he... Oh, okay. No, yeah, I was going to say...
What?
Yeah, I don't know why the... I was going to say, I don't know why it didn't have the green glow there. Maybe because he already locked the attack in. But I was pretty sure he had the attack with Bomb Wrangler that turn. That's why I was like, oh, it's lethal. And now Felkeine does take the win there. A bit of a strange ending to that one. I would have preferred the Grom, but it happened. He evened the match up 1-1. And guess what, Sottle? I'm going to shock you. The 2 wins are both Warriors. It's madness, isn't it? Who would have thought in this crazy world right now that Warrior actually gets some wins? It does mean that the players now have to rely on what I would deem their what would you even call it? Just their personal picks, right? Because I think in this meta you can't not submit Warrior realistically, and a lot of players believe the same is true of Demon Hunter right now, and we see that reflected for these players. But there really is just the other 2 decks are the big choice as far as I'm concerned. And we see that reflected here, the Priest and the Hunter versus the Rogue and the Druid. So now Warriors out the way, you get into the real meter.
Yeah, it looks like Felkeine is going to queue up this Highlander Hunter deck that we've been seeing a ton throughout both days so far. I think it was ever present, possibly. I think there was at least one in every series on day 1, and we're kind of seeing that be the same case here on day 2. Even though it's only been brought by 50% of the players, it does seem to be split up very nicely that we're seeing it just in just about every series so far.
Yeah, it's funny, right? Because that also makes sense. It doesn't quite make sense. If you say it's brought by 50% of the players, we'll see it in half the games. But yeah, I can see where that could go wrong. Most importantly, though, the Grand Slam check box is ticked. Felkeine does have it, but he is, just as a reminder, bringing that deadly shot, which isn't common at all in Highlander Hunter right now. But might catch a few players, not off guard, no, it's in the list, but it just could hit some of those weird spots where Hunter just doesn't have any hard spot removal.
Yeah, and we saw the fireworks at the end of Felkeine's series towards the end of yesterday, where he had that deadly shot on the Taunted Egg for lethal. He had the 1 in 3 to be able to take the win over ball control towards the end of that series, but Boar managed to come out of that alive thanks to the lucky Bessie that he was clutching for goodwill.
Let's get into it. Game number 3 is going to be the Hunter versus the Druid. Definitely a weird matchup. I think for both sides here, because while Hunter will be applying a lot of pressure, Druid does have access to some early removal tools and a good chunk of Hunter's pressure in the game. But then there is just that question of can the Hunter beat down a Glowfly? Really, because I think even Mount Seller, because it normally happens a little bit later in the game, Mount Seller is much more consistently easy to deal with for Hunter. But just the Glowfly on curve is just a nightmare.
Job's done.
Tracking, picks up Animal Companion. Probably the pretty clear choice out of those 3. Most aggressive one on curve. Makes sense for the matchup. Just wants to be as aggressive as possible. Make the biggest board as he can, as early as he can. Curve into that Dino Tamer Brand that he kept in the mulligan.
Yeah, very funny actually here, because Felkeine's got the slow opening, but that is also negated Swidz's opening hand, which was anti-aggressive. With the Wrath, with the Crystal Power. So it's just kind of weird the way both players just have pretty slow opening. Swidz still going to get the first minion on the board with this Rising Wind.
I'll probably cue the Zigzaw from Felkeine as opposed to the Animal Companion. Make sure he can get Companion down on a board where it's not quite so contested. Ooh! Instant Glowfly. How many be? 5? If he does it now. At least 6 if he waits 1 turn.
I think 5 is more than enough.
It's technically 4, because he then doesn't also get to kill this 2-1, which he could just do this turn and then wait 1 turn. So you, in a weird way, sometimes gain 2 Glowflies by waiting 1 turn.
How curious.
Sure, but in that space, you end up gaining 1, right? Because it's very unlikely Hunter doesn't play a minion next.
Yes, it's kind of
Which
nonsense,
then will
because
kill a
they
2-2.
Yeah, they do play a minion in the meantime, but you can then use your second Innovate or your Coin or your Innovate, whichever, on a Crystal Power, but that's unlikely to be killing anything. Yep, okay, I've talked myself into it.
It is, in my many Hunter games, it is the worst thing to happen I've had against Druid. It's just them getting big Glowfly turns out. Because there's not really any cards you run that answer this. You end up having to just either ignore them, which doesn't always pay off that well, or you have to just beat them down over multiple turns, but then you're giving this Druid deck multiple turns of being able to relax a little bit while they build up the board.
Second Power of the Wild draw. Turn was ever so slightly awkward before that draw, but that has solved everything for Swidz. It's just got to be the turn. I don't see anything else. Wrath Crystal Power and keep all your 2/2s? Who cares? Make them 4/4s. It's going to Ironbark instead? Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I was looking at either Ironbark or I did glance at 1 Power of the Wild and a Crystal Power, but just to save the other Power of the Wild more than anything. But that didn't feel very good. But I actually kind of like this halfway. It's still a very threatening board, and he keeps Power of the Wild.
Sure.
It's
Is
not
making
like
them
he's anywhere near
4/4s
turn
better
7.
against Zephyrus out? So I don't think it is, right? Because Zephyrus Shadow Flame doesn't come in until turn 6, which is what he's vulnerable to right now. You can get Zephyrus Shadow Madness here.
I even do that much?
That's quite a lot. Take 7 off the board and leave a 3/2 against 2 3/3s at the end of the turn. I don't know, it's one of those situations where he's so far ahead that we're quibbling over different winning plays, right? I think his line's perfectly fine. I was just very excited about the top deck.
How curious.
Top deck there. You have to go Rising Wind for another minion there, Power of the Wild as well, if he wants, or he could just use the Wrath.
Yeah, it's probably better to Wrath or Crystal Power Hero Power than make the
What about
additional minion.
Wrath for 1. Is that ever crazy? And then use Crystal Power?
Hmm.
Wrath for 1 plus Crystal Power.
Still just Power of the Wild on top of that, or just wait. Just make a 3-2.
Yeah, it's not crazy.
I mean, either
think
way, I'm just looking at just card draw, right? Because I think it's the only way Swidz
Standard time run low.
fails on this game is if somehow Felkeine deals with this bit of board he's got, and then he just runs out of card draw. He doesn't have time to go.
So I like this, personally, because it preserves the Crystal Power, which is healing if he ever needs that in a complete emergency against Hunter. I don't know what that emergency would be and how good his situation is. And I think he already has plenty of card draw with all of these Rising Winds. He has a Twin Spell and a single copy still in hand.
Yeah, I was thinking more of if he needed to, like stagger the card draw over multiple turns instead of having a turn of card draw to go in there. But as we can see, like we did for most of that game, as you may have noticed, we were talking about very, very, very small things that have an impact on the outcome, because really a glow fly that early and then the buff backup is just Hunter, as you saw, just there's nothing that Felkeine can do there. There just aren't the tools that exist in the deck that deal with a wide board like that. There's no explosive trap in there. There's no, he didn't draw Unleash, but even Unleash does almost nothing without a Leot. So yeah, it's just one of those games. But when that doesn't happen, Druid has a much harder time of it if they can't land a glow fly. But we saw the matchup play out kind of as expected, and now Swidz only has his Rogue left, and we're going to see it subtle. Rogue versus Priest.
Well, maybe. Are we? Have we had this confirmed? Is that the matchup?
Well, yeah, they have the Rogue behind Swidz and the Priest behind Felkeine.
Oh, sure, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
If
My
it's not the
observational
matchup,
skill.
I'm going to be like, why are they showing us those classes?
Yeah. So I spend way too much time just watching my own spectator feed and not watching our broadcast integrity feed. So I miss a lot of that stuff.
There's a reason I'm the one who runs the show.
Yeah, exactly.
Duo. Yeah, we are going to see this Priest versus Rogue matchup. And just a reminder as well, Swidz is running a Zephyrus in his list. He is running the Stealth package in his list as well. So, although this is a bit of a different style of Rogue that we too commonly see, Sottle, have there been any advancements in the knowledge of this matchup? Has anyone discovered the secret sauce on how to play it out with the Rogue or the Priest?
Not that I'm aware of, no. We've seen, I believe, a matchup in APAC today where the value plan was attempted and failed miserably. The setup was not as good as the Shaxi version, where he did end up just getting lethal through pressure anyway. But it did not seem like the hardcore value plan with the, the Golden Kobold and all that nonsense was really going to work out. So to me, it still just seems like this is a gotta go fast kind of matchup for the Rogue, and you just need to overwhelm the Priest, play around those key Murazond effects so that you don't give the card draw to the Priest as much as possible, and then just go as fast as you possibly can and try and overwhelm them while they're still only like 12 cards deep in their deck.
Yeah, we'll see how if these players approach it anyway, and if there's someone who's going to play a little bit strange, and I don't mean this as a bad thing, it is Swidz, mainly just because he has access potentially to that Zephyrus late in the game, kind of similar to what we saw of Hunter Ace's Rogue last weekend.
Yeah, definitely interested as to how much that can swing the late game situations.
Even to the extent of, well, if there's a load of lackeys, suddenly just a Bloodlust could win the game, right? And then there's not much to Felkeine. He's not going to, Soul Mirror this board full of lackeys down just in case, right? It's a super weird thing to try and play around.
Well, I think that pretty clearly signals that Swidz is on the value plan this game.
Comfy hoodie on. Wow, we get cozy.
Yep. Just picks himself up a Dragon Queen Alexstrasza while he is still miles away from having it A, be playable, and B, be active.
Choose soon.
Because again, as Raven is talking about Zephyrus, this is not Highlander Rogue. This is full of 2-odds. It just plays so much card draw with, Skyvatir, Greyheart Sage, and Galakron, and so on and so forth, that players sometimes feel like this deck can carry a Zephyrus and still be impactful in the late game.
I must consider.
Sorry, I was just trying to work out where the cut is, but I guess it's the second faceless manipulator for the Zephrys, right? Just in Swidz' list. Still that one devoted maniac in there, which does surprise me a little bit with the amount of extra cards.
Yeah. Particularly if a very big if Swidz is going to set out for long-term value here against Felkeine, do you even need all of your invokes, right? Are you even going to Galakrond to draw 4 cards? But again, obviously his lineup is built for a wider purpose than just beating Priest.
Yeah. We aren't in Specialist anymore, where you have to mainly prepare for what you expect to be the most common.
Now this is more the kind of play that I'm into in this matchup.
Imagine.
Cold Blood Maker 6/6.
Imagine one of the buffs was called for 1. Games would end a lot quicker for Bro.
Can we just get Conceal back? Would that be okay?
Oh no! It wouldn't. Conceal was absolutely busted.
Oh, it was so fun though.
Yeah, it was. For one person.
Yeah.
Felkeine does have just those startings of awkward turns where nothing he does is quite good enough to slow the board down. Oh, and Felkeine does help with that.
Did he want a 2/2 instead of a 1/4 there? Inside his Kaj?
I guess with Apotheosis in hand, maybe not. Or maybe. Wait, what was your question? You wanted the 1/4, is what I'm trying to say with Apotheosis in hand.
Okay.
I forgot which way around you asked the question. I wonder if Faceless is just... Pop this one and then Faceless one. Faceless the lack again. These are the shapes of boards that are very awkward for Felkeine and Priest in general to deal with, right? It's wide enough that Time Rip doesn't do it. It can't be Shadow Madness, and Breath of the Infinite only kills one thing. It would have to be like Breath of the Infinite and Penance, and that still doesn't deal with the board, which is when you put yourself in a great spot against Priest.
The Santa Waterbearer is pretty popping this turn though.
Yeah.
That is a huge victory for Felkeine, which, in context, it really, really sucks that he does not have either copy of Time Rip or either copy of Shadow Word Death in his hand right now to deal with this Edwin Van Cleef that's currently farming him. But in terms of, generated minions from his invokes, Sand of Water Barrier was a pretty good one for him to get there.
Yeah, as I said, it's one of the more pesky middle-of-game cards that generated Priest, because it's big enough to be a threat. Also, the heal just changes things. It means you have to answer it, or else your opponent's just going to keep healing up. And that big level of healing turn on turn is something that Priest actually doesn't do that well. So, a bit awkward here. Now Swidz has to make a decision as to whether he wants to trade into this 1/3. Again, the issue here is it looks like, well, why would you trade into a 1/2 and a 1/3 with lifesteal? It does nothing. Buffs exist. Apotheosis, even just any of the other potentially generated spell buffs that you could get hold of through one way or another. Swidz deciding to actually tend to face, even with the Apotheosis, with the taunt in the way, still going to make the turn hard enough. This might just suddenly be one of those quicker games.
Well, this was the danger of leaving them up. I totally respect Swid's perspective of just saying, well, Apotheosis on its own is garbage here. It just doesn't really do anything. The danger was exactly Sethic into Apotheosis, and then the generated spell being something playable.
Smite and Ripple.
I know. But you can tell by the amount of clauses in that sentence, right, how unlikely that combination of things were to come down to punish Swidz. So I'm definitely on board with his aggressive play there.
And there's also the Eviscerate in hand there for Swidz, which is, of course, extra damage just out of nowhere too. So he even wasn't 100% reliant on every minion living to set up something.
Very low value Galakrond, but that's okay. The value train will get rolling here. Off the hero powers anyway. And he has Tog. He can lock in next turn. If very true.
he wants to go for it, as there is the I almost want to call it the rule of Sottle, the amount you talk about it. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but the old do you go wand against a potential Murzond?
You present that as a question. It's not a question. You just don't.
Is there ever a reason when you're basically facing down such a high chance of lethal? If there was no, for example, Krunks in the hand now?
Oh, I mean, obviously there's a point, yeah. I mean, if you have 3 cards left in your deck and one of them is Kronks that ends the game, then yes, of course you do it because it's lethal. So, based on the answer to that question being yes, there's obviously a middle ground somewhere where it's still yes, but on average, no, it's just a pretty bad.
Always got to keep your eye on Krunk's Shadow Step as well when it's in hand, because
Yes, you do.
another Shadow Step, that's just kind of close to lethal. If you just Krunk, Shadow Step, Krunk, Shadow Step.
Crown, pick 2 minions without Taunt or Lifesteal or anything defensive. 8/8s will do just fine.
Yes!
do not pick Octosari.
Why? Fatigue! if he copies Octo, you just win. Think about it.
Soul Mirror, though? Isn't Soul Mirror worse for you because you're closer to Fatigue in that scenario? And you have a handful of cards?
Shadow Step 1.
You could Shadow Step 1, he says. Okay.
How about that?
Alright, perfect. Love it.
You think this is your time? It is mine.
So now goes the Murzond, there goes the Crown, he gets... Well, actually better minions. Fair enough.
Still dead, though.
Yep. Obviously, the Crown is a reroll. I guess I should be clear. When I said on the previous term, pick something without Taunt or Lifesteal or anything like that, that's because of Soul Mirror, not because of Murzond. Does Shadow Madness Breath? Yeah.
Wait. Oh, yeah, yes. Just trade the 360 to the top. Yep. Okay, I wouldn't do it that way around, but...
Oh! The Kronks! Shadow Step, Kronks. Just gonna end it.
Not lethal on board, but lethal with the help of Krunks. And wow, that was just a ton of damage. But I will say, I do like the way Swidz managed that. And you pointed out as well, just the tog with the Crown into not something that will punish you if it is copied, necessarily if it's played, but also the Crown rerolls. There's also a chance there. But I do like Swidz just overall not going for that one, which we want to drill home as the main point of potentially giving access for Felkeine to, say, Galakron or any of the other crazy things that can happen with their priests. So, pretty crazy
so again,
overall.
Because we're kind of fumbling over like Shadow Madness plays at the end of the game. Again, when I say like don't take Lifesteal or Taunt off the Crown there, that's because of Soul Mirror being the interaction to come back and you can, trade through their taunts and you still have taunts in play off Soul Mirror, something like that, or obviously Lifesteal. I don't even know if that's possible right now, but anyway, even if it is, don't pick it. But that to me is how you play the matchup. That's been how I've won the matchup as Rogue. That's been how I've lost the matchup as Priest. The long-term value plan I've never seen work. There's still that X factor of that Shaxi game where it looked like it might have been working if he didn't just get lethal, but I would still say that maybe the Priest can find the way out of that on just a straight-up value plan if they were able to survive. I do think that scenario that you see there where you play so aggressive that you outvalue the Priest's hand. You can't outvalue their deck, but you can force them to use their cards inefficiently by being aggressive, and by then they just run out of cards in hand, and then you're just basically free to do whatever you want because you're playing like 6 cards versus 1 or something ridiculous at that point, even if you haven't got lethal.
It really is similar, without being a bit too silly, but similar to the way Highlander Hunter plays versus Priest, right? You put on so many threats going forward and it gets so high damage output, and they just don't have them enough to remove them at the right time. But that was our match 3 for the day. We have got 5 matches in total for today's Grandmasters in the European region. We have Psycho versus Ball Control coming up next, and then to finish off the day, It's going to be Hunter Ace versus Bunny Hopper, two of arguably, maybe even the two best players in the world. Depending on who you speak to, going at it in the final match, and maybe even just to finish that game off with a Priest Mirror. It can happen. It might not, but it could. But for now, we are going to go to a break while we get the players ready for matches 4 and 5. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with some more Hearthstone Grandmasters.